Well, Brian, it's fitting as we're standing in a wheat field to be talking about soybeans and controlling broadleaf weeds.
Yeah. So one of the things that farmers loved about 15 years ago was getting Roundup soybeans, because then you didn't have to use 8 different herbicides to kill all the weeds that were in your field. You could just go spray one thing and everything's dead. But the problem now is there are a lot of weeds that have built up tolerance or even resistance to Roundup. So farmers are having to go back to a lot of the same herbicides that we had 15 years ago before those Roundup beans ever came out. So anyway, today we wanted to talk through some of these different products and what you can use on your farm depending on the weed problem that you've got. Now the thing before we get into all this that I want to stress to you is just about all these products, you've got to control the weeds when they're 2 to 4 inches tall, maybe 6 inches tall at the most. Now you should want to control them when they're really small, because that's when you get the best yield. The longer they're growing in your field, the more yield you have just lost. But besides that, you can't control those weeds when they get big with those other herbicides. All right, let's talk through some of the most popular post-emerge broadleaf herbicides in soybeans. We'll begin with FlexStar. I think that's the most well-rounded product that we've got right now. It does have residual. You can only spray FlexStar once per season. In fact, we do worry about carryover, and there are different labels in different areas of the country. So in some areas of the country, it's labeled to use 16 ounces. Other areas, it's 12 ounces. Generally speaking, we're recommending 12 ounces max for FlexStar because we do get worried about that carryover to other crops, including corn. The thing with FlexStar, it is going to be very good on water hemp. It's going to be merely okay on lamb's quarters and some of the other weeds that we deal with. But when we're talking water hemp, common ragweed, even giant ragweed, it's not that bad. Some of the worst Roundup resistant weeds we've got, FlexStar's right there as the best,
Well,
I would say.
it's a nice helper, but you think about back
Well,
in
helper? No, seriously. I mean, tell me what's better on water hemp.
Cobra. And you can certainly use Cobra. Now, the reason that guys have switched away from Cobra to FlexStar is FlexStar has a little less crop burn. A little less. Now, it depends on what the weather is, what your nutrient conditions are in your crop. As we talked with the tissue sampling, what we found back in the days where a lot of Cobra was being used is the guys that had the worst burn in their fields were short on boron. They were short on a micronutrient out in their field. Well, you know, you just don't know. You can't blame it all on the product. Oh, Cobra is terrible, it burns things. No, you were short on nutrients and it just called you on your bluff.
Okay, Cobra also has activity on ragweed, but the best product on ragweed is going to be First Rate. Now, if you used Authority first, or if you used First Rate pre-emerge, you can't use it again post-emerge. It can only be used one time per season.
Some of the FMC people will tell you, oh, go ahead, just use it again, use it again, use it again.
Of course they will. Now, I would not recommend that because I'm concerned about carryover. If you, especially in high pH soils. Now, if you have low pH soil, and especially if you're going to rotate again to soybeans, if it's soybeans on soybeans, that's fine. Go ahead and use First Rate depending on what the label says in your area.
Well, what I would do is just pick something different, like take Authority MTZ.
Well, it's too late for that. That's already
instead
done.
Instead of Authority First next year. Yep. Now you've got that option to use more First Rate
very few people are using First Rate pre-emerge, so most people can use First Rate post-emerge, and it's a great product. It's fantastic on the ragweeds, common and giant ragweed. It's also very good on cocklebur and sunflower. But how about when we get to nightshade, for example? Well, then you've got to go, FlexStar's pretty decent. Pursuit would be my #1 choice when it comes to nightshade. Pursuit's also going to be good on a lot of other weeds, cocklebur, sunflower.
Velvet leaf is one that I think about.
The other big thing that we want you to think about when you're out spraying your soybean broadleaves is, what can I come back with later? What's my rescue options? And going back, that's why we talk so much about using a good pre-emerge herbicide in soybeans, because we just don't have a lot of options that are very broad spectrum, and especially any that you can spray multiple times.
Now, the last point I'll make, and I don't want to try and raise a panic, and I'm not trying to scare anybody, but a lot of these products really are conventional soybean products now that we're going to use on Roundup Ready beans. So some of these products are going to get into tight supply, especially in local areas. If all of a sudden in your area, oh no, we've got Roundup resistant giant ragweed that popped up, now everybody wants to use First Rate, guess what? In your local area, First Rate might get tight. So just think about it. Plan ahead. If you're going to be spraying your soybeans and you're going to use one of these broadleaf helpers, order it ahead and take it on your farm as soon as you possibly can, just to make sure that you get what you're going to need.
And of course, if you have Liberty Link soybeans, you can spray Liberty post-emerge. That is very broad spectrum, but it has no residual. So just kind of keep that in mind. You might have to spray multiple times.
Well, controlling broadleaves in soybeans is tough, but how about our weed of the week? We'll show you coming up next.